The VRYX homeworld of Krashan was not a place for the faint of heart. Its gravity measured 1.4 times Earth standard, its atmosphere thick with sulfur compounds that required human visitors to wear respirators, and its dominant species, the VRYX themselves, were apex predators who had clawed their way to sapience through 10 million years of evolution as pack hunters. Daniel Torres knelt in the red dust, adjusting the gravitational compensator on the embassy's water reclamation unit. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cooling vest under his maintenance coveralls. 6 months into his assignment as the human embassy's chief engineer, and he still hadn't adjusted to Krashan's brutal environment. Something sharp tugged at his boot. Daniel glanced down to find a VRYX cub, barely 3 feet tall, covered in charcoal gray fur with distinctive crimson markings along its spine. The young predator had latched onto his boot with needle-sharp teeth, growling in a high-pitched tone that would have been adorable if Daniel didn't know that adult VRYX could bite through steel plating. "Hey, little guy," Daniel said softly, reaching down to gently detach the cub. "Those boots cost me a week's salary." The cub released his boot only to immediately latch onto his gloved hand, its golden eyes gleaming with playful aggression. Its small jaws couldn't penetrate the reinforced material, but Daniel felt the pressure. "Kira SH." A voice barked across the compound. Ambassador Thrak Nor, the VRYX diplomat assigned as the human embassy's liaison, approached with rapid, predatory grace. His 8-foot frame was covered in battle scars, and his fangs were filed to ceremonial points, a mark of his warrior caste. "Release the human immediately." The cub's ears flattened, but it didn't let go. Daniel looked at the tiny predator, then at Thraknor's horrified expression, and something in his primate brain, the part that remembered playing with dogs and wrestling with younger siblings, made a decision that would change everything. He bit the cub's ear. Not hard. Just enough pressure to be felt through the fur. A playful nip, the kind he'd seen wolves do in nature documentaries, the kind his own dog used to do when they played as kids. The cub released his hand immediately, stumbling back with wide eyes. Then it made a sound, a chirping, trilling noise that Daniel's translator couldn't interpret. Thraknor froze mid-stride, his own eyes widening to show more gold than Daniel had ever seen. The ambassador's mouth fell open, revealing rows of predatory teeth. "By the first hunt," Thraknor whispered. "What have you done?" Daniel stood slowly, suddenly aware that every VRYX in the compound had stopped what they were doing. Workers, guards, diplomats, all staring at him with expressions he couldn't read. Did I hurt him? I barely touched." "You marked yourself as pack," Thraknor interrupted, his voice carrying a weight Daniel had never heard before. "You responded to Kira SH's play challenge with the bite return. You spoke the first language." "The what?" The cub, Kira SH, circled Daniel's legs, still making that trilling sound. Then it did something that made Daniel's breath catch, it pressed its head against his knee and exposed its throat. "The first language," Thraknor repeated, his voice softer now, almost reverent. "The language before words. Before civilization. The language of the hunt, of the pack." He gestured to the cub. Kira SH issued a play challenge, as cubs do. In VRYX culture, there are only 3 responses: dominance, where an adult would pin the cub down; rejection, where one would push the cub away; or acceptance, the bite return, signifying willingness to engage as pack. Daniel looked down at the small predator exposing its most vulnerable point. "I didn't know. It reminded me of playing with my dog back home." "Your dog?" Thraknor's translator struggled with the earth animal's name. "A domesticated predator. Humans bred them from wolves over thousands of years. We live with them, play with them. They're family." Daniel carefully placed his hand on Kira SH's head. The cub leaned into the touch, still trilling. Thraknor sat down heavily, a gesture of such vulnerability that several nearby VRYX gasped. "Domesticated predators? You kept pack hunters in your homes?" "For over 15,000 years, Daniel confirmed." Before we had cities or agriculture, we had dogs. We hunted together, protected each other, raised our young alongside theirs. Humans understand pack behavior because we've been part of one for most of our history. The ambassador's expression shifted through several emotions Daniel's translator marked as shock, understanding, and something that might have been respect. The Galactic Council briefed us that humans were persistence predators from a death world, but they never mentioned this. He gestured at Daniel and Kira Sh, who had now curled up against the human's legs. We VRWX achieved sapience, then spent millennia trying to civilize away our predator instincts. We see them as primitive, something to control. We integrated them, Daniel said quietly. Humans are persistence predators, but we're also social pack animals. We understand hierarchy, loyalty, the bond between pack members. We never tried to civilize it away, we built our civilization on top of it. Thraknor stood, and Daniel noticed that every other VRYX in the compound had moved closer, forming a loose circle around them. Kira Sh is the daughter of war leader Shinvar, commander of the Krashan Defense Fleet. She was brought to the compound today because her mother is negotiating trade agreements in the embassy. Daniel felt his stomach drop. I bid a war leader's daughter. You accepted a war leader's daughter into your pack, Thraknor corrected. There is a difference. He paused. A significant difference. By the old laws, laws that predate our civilization, you are now bound by pack right. Kira Sh has marked you as pack, and you have accepted. Her mother will have to acknowledge this. What does that mean? It means, a new voice cut through the air, deep and resonant, that you have done what no off-worlder has accomplished in 300 years of Galactic Council membership. The crowd of VRYX parted. A massive female VRYX, standing nearly 9 feet tall and covered in scars that told of countless battles, strode forward. Her crimson markings matched Kira Sh's exactly. War leader Shinvar, Daniel realized. He didn't know the proper protocol, so he did what felt right, he stood his ground and met her eyes. Kira Sh chirped and ran to her mother, then back to Daniel, then to her mother again, still making that excited trilling sound. Shinvar looked down at her daughter, then at Daniel, then at Thraknor. Explain. The ambassador did, quickly and precisely. Shinvar listened without interruption, her golden eyes never leaving Daniel's face. When Thraknor finished, the war leader was silent for a long moment. Then she did something that made every VRYX in the compound drop to one knee, she exposed her throat. Human Daniel Torres, she said formally, you have accepted my daughter's pack challenge. By the laws of the first hunt, by the bonds that existed before words, I acknowledge you as pack brother. My blood is your blood. My hunt is your hunt. My enemies are your enemies. Daniel's translator added a footnote, this is the highest honor in VRYX culture, reserved for pack bonds. Daniel started, then stopped. He thought about his grandfather's words, when someone offers you their respect, don't dishonor it by refusing. He placed his fist over his heart, a human gesture, and bowed his head, exposing his own neck. I accept, war leader Shinvar. And I promise to honor the pack. Shinvar's face split into what Daniel's translator labeled as a hunting smile. Good. Then you will join us for the evening hunt tonight. Pack brothers hunt together. As she turned to leave, Kira Sh bounded back to Daniel and wrapped her small arms around his leg. He reached down and gently scratched behind her ears, right where dogs liked it, he remembered, and was rewarded with more of that trilling sound. Thraknor approached, shaking his head in amazement. In 6 months, you've accomplished more diplomatic progress than the previous 3 ambassadors combined. How? Daniel looked down at the cub, then at the VRYX around them, seeing them differently now, not as alien predators, but as pack hunters who understood loyalty, family, and the bonds forged in play and trust. Because humans remember, he said simply. We remember what it was like to be part of a pack, to hunt together, to protect each other. We never forgot the first language. We just learned to speak it with different words. That night, Daniel Torres ran with the VRYX under Krashan's twin moons, his respirator filtering the sulfur air, his legs burning in the heavy gravity, and a predator cub matching his pace while her mother and the pack ran beside them. And he realized that sometimes, the oldest languages, the ones spoken in playbites and exposed throats and the simple act of running together, transcended species, worlds, and the vast darkness between stars. The first language, it turned out, was universal after all.